I'm Phil Svitek, and welcome to his Dark Materials, the finale spoiler review. That's right, we've gone on this entire journey, 3 seasons, and done it all, right? His Dark Materials is based off of Phillip Pullman's trilogy of that name, but consists of the Golden Compass, the Subtle Knife, and the Amber Spyglass, and this is what it all culminates into. And so by just that description alone, you can probably tell that I'm going to talk about everything, right? We've seen it all at this point, and so I'm just going to talk about the series as a whole, and I'm also going to talk about the books, right? And just right off the bat, I will say this final episode, overall, very, very faithful to the last chapters of the book, right? Just kind of stray observations there. You know, in the book, Mary sees the hole that Will and Lyra cut through to get to this world, and she's the one that kind of identifies that it is the knife that is causing the dust to leave and things like that. So she plays a little bit bigger of a role in that capacity, but certainly as the storyteller, that is right there. Like, you know, things slightly changed around, but overall very true to it. And in fact, it had been a while since I last read the books. I had forgotten about Father Gomez sort of being the last obstacle, if you will. And, you know, that's true to the book as well. And the way he gets defeated, you know, through Bartholomew, very touching. You know, all that rings true. And certainly the spirit of the ending, you know, with Will and Lyra visiting their respective benches is all there. So, you know, pretty much pound for pound overall, you know, it's exactly in the book. So Phillip Pullman kind of knew what he was doing, right? That's the beautiful part about all of it. And I just have to say, like, seeing it realized in that way, because when I read the books, I was very much moved, and seeing it here visually put on the screen and having those moments sort of really be extrapolated, you know, because it's one thing to read like a page and, you know, you're going at the same sort of pace. Here with the visual medium, you can slow down moments and things of that nature. It was a very heartfelt and touching, you know, way to end it, and it really gripped me. I mean, I think overall your enjoyment of this episode, as well as this series, will be how much you buy into the aspect of dust is consciousness / love and experience. The idea that love can transcend, you know, any borders, and the message of hope. Ultimately, that's what this is. So how much you buy into that will determine your enjoyment of it. But ever since I read the books, I was always on board with it. And so to see it adapted in this way was really powerful, beautiful, and I thought tastefully done. You know, a lot of this hinges on Will and Lyra's, you know, coming of age, right? And the way Mary ultimately plays the Serpent with telling them stories, which I thought was a beautiful way to tie in, you know, Gracious Wings from the Land of the Dead. And in this way, just telling them about like all the things in life that's possible if you open up yourself to experience. And you can see the subtle hints of, you know, Will and Lyra kind of processing that information in real time. And then, you know, the classical dopey moment of they want to say something to each other, right? They're in the water. Will wants to try to say something, but of course, you know, he's saying the wrong thing. He's talking about Mary's great, right? That whole innocence of it all. And then finally they kiss, and you know, that's a beautiful moment, and then only to essentially be ripped away, right? You know, it is a love that is not meant to last, unfortunately. And in many ways, it's kind of, you know, there's this there's this adage that says all love stories end in tragedy, because at some point someone leaves, someone dies, and things of that nature. But it doesn't negate the love, right? And the bond, and that love, even though tragic, always remains. And I think just like all aspects of life, we cannot taste the sweet without the bitter, and that's how they know this love is truly real. And the beautiful aspects, again, which is straight out of the book, is Pan and Will's demon. They don't return until after this moment. They don't come back until they've completed their final, their form that they're going to take for the rest of their lives, because they realize the transformation, the impact of that on their respective humans, and they're ready to have grace and forgive both Will and Lyra for opting to leave them behind when they needed to, right? They couldn't take them to the land of the dead. So all that was really powerful, and in that sense, I feel like I'm just going to repeat a lot of things in that way, but really it just, this entire episode rides on emotion, right? And well-deserved emotion, right? There's times when you watch something and it just is melodramatic. This is all very earned in that way, and it was all there, as I said, in the Phillip Pullman books. All the layers were there, and so when Bartholomew says that all love is beautiful, I think that there might be certain people that can watch that and be hateful of that phrasing, right? Because it implies just all sorts of love, right? LGBTQ, and beyond. I think that's what the beautiful aspect of this is, and its message, why it resonates so deeply with me, is that ultimately, as long as you're not causing harm to anyone else, there's a way to have empathy and love and live out your life to its fullest. And that's what's so moving. I mean, that's a very beautiful, inspiring message. And one that, if you haven't read the books, you might think, oh, this is just them kind of shoehorning this in because of an agenda or whatever, right? But it's not. It was always there from the get-go. This idea that love takes many forms, and it's the most beautiful aspect of our world, And that's why I said, they said dust is consciousness, but really it's love. Consciousness is love, and so yeah, that's what's so great about it. And everyone in this episode feels certain heartache because Mary, from her scientific perspective, right, as she says, she's learned more here in the few months she's been here than all of 10 years. And when Serafina, when the angel comes to her, you could see the pain when she says, I'm not ready to leave. It's you have to. And also that beautiful moment of just the explanation of you did it, you played your part. And when Mary says, but it's just a small, tiny act. And that to me resonated a lot because, I think in this world, we try to write our own stories and be our own heroes and try to do noble things, thinking we need this grand thing, but it's really everyday acts of kindness have a tremendously profound effect that we don't even realize on things, right? And I know this to be true from my own life, now with the experiences that I've had, I've touched base thanks to, the online world that we live in with some people from high school. And, you know, certain people are like, hey, like, what you did really meant a lot to me. And I'm like, hey, really? I don't think I did much, but okay. And vice versa. You know, there's people in my life who probably would never remember me, but have had such a tremendous impact with just a small, kind gesture. And that, you know, is a representation of love. It doesn't, you know, this obviously takes the form of, you know, Adam and Eve, quite literally in that sense, so romantic love. But the message is there that love takes on many forms. You know, we, pardon the pun, we over-romanticize romantic love. And while that is a beautiful, beautiful love, there are many forms of love. And, you know, like the love of a demon. And, excuse me, you know, that plays into this as well. The forgiveness aspect of it, so they can love again Lyra and Pan. And then, you know, Will can accept his demon. And one of the beautiful aspects was also Mary finding her demon, which was a wonderful moment in the sense, like, just like from a spiritual perspective, this was just a wonderful episode full of nuggets, because as Serafina says, you know, you only saw dust when you believed in dust. And so that aspect, like, you know, Mary didn't believe she had a demon, so she, of course, couldn't see her. Or, you know, him, rather, because her demon would be a male. And now that she does, and she accepts that, she can see her demon. And the full circle moment, too, you know, just going back to this and putting a bow on it, if you will, when she's speaking with the angel, and the angel says, you know, I was the one communicating with you back in your world with the quantum computer and your shadow particles and so forth. And it's like, oh yeah. You know, it's something like, once you know that fact, it's like, well, yeah, you know, the voice is exactly the same, right? But it's something that until now I just overlooked, and finally learning that, just like Mary did, I was like, oh wow, it's amazing. So yeah, things are essentially restored, and that's wonderful. You know, the Mufala. It was great to see them. You know, and you could see kind of even just them being hurt that Mary had to leave. You know, they grew so fond of her, and they grew fond of the kids. You know, a lot of this played, you know, with the idea that Mary had more dust than the kids, right? Which we've known to some capacity, right? And then finally, like, here, it's for all the marbles. We get all the answers of it, and it's because they haven't experienced, you know, love and let go of their innocence, you know, their coming of age. And as I said, like, just those moments, very tactfully done. I think very heartfelt, not gratuitous, but at the same time, he felt the emotions of Will and Lyra. And the pain, you know, once they learn, like, that they have to be in their worlds and they have to break the knife, because the knife represents temptation, but not temptation in this beautiful way that we're discussing, but more so, you know, it creates specters, which is the realization that Will learns of every time he opened the world, the specter gets created. And obviously that's not something that he wants. In the book, a very minor detail, but the angels are taught how to close the doors, or the windows, portals, whatever you want to call them. And here, obviously, it's a slight differentiation where the angels themselves, once the knife is broken, have the ability to do so, right? But yeah, very, very gut-wrenching, that realization that he needs to destroy the knife, because the knife is that calling to him, and he recognizes it, as he tells Lyra, and you can see it, like she says to him, like, just cut open, into your world, like, let's go, sort of thing. And it's a metaphorical cutting into her heart, like him leaving will rip her heart. It's just so beautiful, right? And he tries to, in his own way, just get it over with and leave, knowing the heartache, and not look back, and stuff like that. But then, of course, he can't help but call out to her and give her one final kiss, and then he closes the door. A lot of emotions in that, and of course, as his demon tells him, think of her, and then that's what breaks the knife, which isn't a one-to-one comparison to Mrs. Coulter, but not in terms of knife breaking, but in terms of excuse me, when Mrs. Coulter is told that her love of Lyra is both her greatest strength and her greatest weakness. And so, I don't know, just for me, it reminded me of that moment, and what it all means, I don't necessarily know, other than I just saw that and felt that connection. Which, speaking of mothers, I thought it was a touching tribute for Lyra to discuss her mother and Lord Asriel, and how she always looked up to Lord Asriel, but then she discovered that he was her father, and she couldn't love him. Same with Mrs. Coulter, that sort of thing, and yet she found grace for them in the end. Like, in the end, their noble act was very redeeming, which I didn't touch upon in this capacity in last episode, but the idea, like, they sacrificed themselves into the abyss, right? So it's not like they just died and will ultimately be freed through the land of the dead like all the rest of the souls. No. They suffered a fate much worse than death, willingly, to do not only what they, for everyone else, the great sacrifice, but it stemmed from that place in their heart where it was for Lyra. And she recognized that. So that was what was so tender about this whole thing. And her transformation, took on so many forms. Like, there's so much to contend with in their minds. They're going through. For Will, he's gonna get to be reunited with his mother finally, and tell her all these great adventures that he did finally meet his father, and they can close the chapter on that. And of course, he has Marion as his world, and Lyra has Serafina, right? As she says, she will be forever a sister. But that childlike innocence is gone, and we knew that it was gone as soon as Lyra couldn't read the alethiometer. And Serafina says to her, the knowledge is out there. Unfortunately, you just have to work for it this time. And as the end title cards give us, she does. She will. And that's what's so beautiful about all of it. So I know I sound in many ways like a broken record, but it's hard to describe this elation, this euphoria of emotion, and we get the title cards, which is pretty much true to the books. The thing that wasn't there is on her next adventure. I don't recall that, which I think was added because Phillip Pullman did write more books. I think it's called the Dust series. I haven't read those books. I'm very curious to, but at the same time, it's almost like, how do you get more grander than, taking down the authority sort of thing? So anything in comparison might feel like a letdown. But maybe, obviously he's proven himself, at least to me, as a fantastic writer. So, having that faith in what he brings, I think that'll be part of my grieving process, let's say. I mean, I think, whether you've read the books, whether you've just seen the show, I think if you're emotionally invested into the characters, you can empathize with them, and they've gone on this tremendous journey. And much like them, they have to return to everyday normal life without many of the people that they love. There's no John Perry. There's no Lee Scoresby. There's no Mrs. Coulter. There's no Lord Asriel for however much, I just have to believe that Lyra, if given a choice, in spite of everything that, both her parents did, she would still want to see them, right? Ruta gone as well, so just a lot of loss. The sacrifice of needing to of this whole war, and it was a war. That's a lot. It's, I'm sure you can relate, where you go on this transformational moment, whether it's just something as, to borrow the words of Mary, something as small and silly, paraphrasing, like a vacation, or, getting a pet, finding a loved one, there's just extraordinarily beautiful moments in life that if we just all open our eyes to, we can recognize and be in awe of and inspired by. And I think that's what this whole series aims to do, is remind us of the glorious nature of our own world. But that somehow we've gotten away from it. Modern day living, and just the anger of, we feel by doing that, and then we project it onto others and so forth. And that's why the idea of keep telling them stories is so powerful, because it's true. I mean, that's why we love stories of all kinds: TV shows, movies, poems, music, books, paintings, right? They're all forms of stories. Or just chatting with friends and things of that nature. It's all stories that are meant to give us our humanity. And what's more powerful than that? So, those are my thoughts. I could go on, but I feel like I've definitely belabored the point, and hopefully you understand what I'm grasping at. But I'm very curious to know your thoughts and opinions on this finale. So please comment down below, because I don't, part of the coping, I think, because I've been on Twitter, and, a lot of the reaction of people who have watched the finale is the same. They're gutted. It was so emotionally beautiful because we were all vested into this story, these characters. And so, I'd like it to not end just with me talking into a camera. I'd like to, discuss it with you. Even if you didn't love it, let's have a civil discussion about what didn't work for you. It's okay. That's the beautiful thing about stories. Not every one of them is going to resonate with us, but we can talk about it. What did, what didn't. So, thank you for joining me on this journey of, each of these episodes. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time spent with you. And if there's a spin-off series based on the other books, then I will return to this world yet again. But if not, it was beautiful, and I truly, truly appreciate you. And a long, fulfilled